Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Become a Villain in Highschool DXD Part 14. Before we start, please go support RageRevan for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. Chapter 40. Shiva's Choice. Issei and his allies were in the ship. The Greek faction had just fallen to Issei's hand. Additionally, they were being joined by both Demeter and Hestia. Hestia looked at Issei and asked, "So, is everything over?" "Yeah. Greek faction has fallen. Olympus is now nothing but a ruined city." Issei spoke with a serious tone. "No survivors remain. I and my faction have made sure of that." "I see." Hestia spoke with a sigh as she continued, "So is it true, Artemis? Are you really pregnant?" Hestia and Demeter had slight doubts. They knew about Artemis's virgin nature. She was still uncertain. Artemis walked towards her and took their hand with each of her own and placed it in her abdomen. She then spoke with a smile, "Can you feel it?" It only took the goddess duo a moment to realize it was true. Artemis was really pregnant and they couldn't be any more happy for her. Now they realized why Artemis despised the Greek faction so much. Her pregnancy, coupled with the things she went through thanks to them, made her really hateful towards them. Additionally, she also had a child to protect and she was not going to let anyone harm the child, no matter who she faces up against. Hestia then embraced her with happiness and exclaimed, "I am so happy for you, Artemis." Artemis was surprised by this for a moment as she returned her gratitude back to her and responded, "Thank you, Hestia. I am glad you didn't choose Zeus over us." Hestia had split from her and responded while shaking her head, "Truth be told, I have been trying to leave, but Zeus and the other Olympians have been keeping an eye on me and the others. We couldn't even visit you due to potentially him killing us." Hestia spoke sadly as Demeter was also quiet. She wanted to visit her daughter as soon as possible, but Zeus declared her and Hades as a traitor, much to her fury, but she stayed quiet due to fear. "Hestia, Zeus will be soon gone from this world. You two no longer need to fear him in any way." Artemis spoke with a smile. She stopped considering him as her father a long time ago. Hestia could only look at her and nod. She knew her days of being with the Olympians were over. She could start a new life. Similar thoughts were in Demeter as well. They both were happy to be the ones to get the chance to be with their loved ones, and this time, she was not going to screw it. "Alright, Demeter, I will be sending you to directly, you know where to go, right?" Demeter nodded with a smile as she spoke, "Yes, I do, Lord Issei." Issei soon teleported Demeter directly to Hades' section of the underworld as he sent a text message to Persephone, knowing that she would be happy tonight. Demeter's return surely would bring her joy back to the underworld. "Now then." Issei's tone changed to a serious tone as he continued, "We still have Zeus to deal with." Issei looks at the droid commander who responds, "As you wish, Supreme Leader." The ship soon went out of trace, leaving nothing but the fallen remains of what used to be Olympus. A few moments later, Azazel, Michael, Elmenhold and Amaterasu showed up as they were horrified to see what remained. "We are too late." Elmenhold spoke with fear and dread in her voice. Now only one god pantheon remained that was with them, and that was the Shinto pantheon. Both Greek and Norse have fallen, while Hindu had refused to have any contact with them. "Damn that bastard, he showed no mercy, no one survived his onslaught." Azazel spoke with fury with your voice. He hated that another had fallen before they could even arrive to aid them in any way. Issei showed no mercy to anyone involved in his path. "He is not giving us a chance to recover. He has the power to wipe us out, and there is nothing we can do." Michael spoke with fear as Amaterasu tried to instill hope in their eyes, "But there has got to be something we have to do. Issei needs to be stopped at this point. His carnage will wipe us all out from the surface of the planet." Azazel thought for a moment. He was thinking of anything, any weapon aside from Samuel's poison that could let them have a fighting chance. He then remembered something as he spoke, "There is a way." "What? What could there possibly be that could stop him?" Elmenhold asked with confusion as Azazel spoke with a smile, "Come follow me to the underworld. I know exactly how we can stop his madness." The leaders teleported out of there. Greek faction was lost, but they had hoped that Issei and his allies could be stopped. Hades' realm, underworld, 9:30 p.m. Persephone was tending to the fields that were growing at her home. She saw Issei's message of a surprise, wondering what would Issei bring for her. She soon sighed as she was done with her part with tending the fields. She remembered her conversation she had with Issei before he wiped out the Greek faction. She wanted Issei to at least try to spare Demeter if he could, the reason being she did not want to see her mother die. Zeus, on the other hand, she could care less what happens to that man-child. She managed to convince Issei to give it a shot, and even if he couldn't spare Demeter, she wouldn't hold anything against him. Demeter soon teleported into their domain, which caused Persephone to be surprised. She sensed the magic to be belonging to that of the Welsh dragon. She exclaimed for a moment, "Ice-chan, wait, I just need to clean up." Persephone dusted the dirt of her clothing as she got up, however when she turned around, she was shocked to see the person in front of her was not Issei, but Demeter. However, her shock soon turned to happiness. This meant Issei listened to her and kept his word. Tears were forming on her eyes as she exclaimed with a teary tone, "Mother, is that you?" Demeter also had tears in her eyes. It has been centuries since the mother-daughter duo had seen each other. Demeter couldn't even see Persephone's deceased body when she was killed by the Longinus wielder. Now, here she was in her full glory, once again alive right in front of her. "Indeed, it is me, Persephone. I missed you, my girl." Demeter croaked with a tearful tone. She was happy to be reunited with her girl. The two then rushed towards each other as tears started to stream in their eyes. Demeter held her daughter's head as the two cried onto each other. "I missed you so much, Mother," Persephone exclaimed with happiness in her voice as Demeter rubbed her daughter's back as she spoke. "I missed you too, Persephone." The two remained like this for a few moments until they separated as Demeter spoke. "How have you been?" "Better, Mother. I am glad you chose to come here rather than support Zeus." Demeter frowned upon hearing his name and spoke. "That bastard declared you a traitor. I was done with him, but couldn't leave because Zeus would try to attack me. When Lord Issei gave me the choice, I fully accepted his deal, and I was not the only one. Hestia also left and abandoned Zeus and the Olympians, leaving them to his fate. Olympus has fallen, Persephone." "I know, Mother." Persephone spoke with a cold tone as she continued. "He always had a grudge against Ice-chan. He despised him for ruining his relationship with his girls, even when he was the one responsible for ruining their relationship. It was only natural that Artemis and Athena turned on them, worse, when he tried to go after Artemis's unborn child. Well, let's not delve into our past, what's done is done." Demeter spoke with a sigh as she continued, "Let's head inside. I would love to meet Melano, Macaria and Hades. The children would love to meet their grandmother, and Hades has changed a lot after my return. It would be nice to have you back, Mother." Persephone responded with a smile of her own as mother and daughter duo headed inside to meet with the rest of their family. Scene change. Droid faction base, 10 p.m. Issei, Artemis and Athena were looking at a chained Zeus, who was completely broken and passed out. His body had been damaged a lot due to his fight against Issei Haidu. He looked at the girls and spoke. "It's time." Artemis and Athena nodded seriously as Issei walked forward and put his hand on a fingerprint scanner which was able to identify him as the person. He walked towards Zeus and lightly tapped his face. "Wake up, cheater god." Zeus groaned in pain when he heard his name being called, however that soon changed to fear and anger when he saw Issei and his two daughters, or one should say his two former daughters, looking at him with hatred in their eyes. "And don't even think about escaping your little enclosure here. I made sure to use a specialized sealing magic circle that not only prevents teleportation, but also chains that prevent your usage of powers, and finally a healing chamber that will restore your health a little when you are almost dying." Issei spoke coldly and seriously as Zeus angrily demanded, "Who do you think you are, you damn draw?" Zeus was unable to complete as someone gave him a hard slap to the face which completely broke his jawline. It was dangling from his face as he looked at the one who did it. It was a very angry Artemis. "You have some nerve of insulting the one that is in charge of everything. Even after everything you have done makes me wonder why you are not one of the smartest gods in Olympus." Artemis spoke coldly as Zeus angrily glared at her. He knew Olympus would have fallen at this point. Athena then looked at her and spoke coldly. "Let it be Artie, this idiot can't see anything above himself or his hick." Athena looked at Zeus apathetically as he turned to Issei and asked, "Ice, can we be the ones to torture him? I always wanted to see him beg for mercy and fear us." "Sure, he is all yours." Issei was about to leave since he wanted to talk to Ain to reveal himself, however Athena stopped him and asked, "Ice, can you also lend us the mortis blade temporarily?" "Sure, why not?" Issei spoke with a shrug as he gave the mortis blade to Athena. Both the goddesses could feel the god-slaying magic emanating from the blade, which even made both of them flinch and shudder for a moment. They feared the powers and capabilities of the weapon as Athena shook any thoughts as she looked towards Zeus, who was fearful and shuddering with fear seeing the mortis blade. "Now then, Zeus, I hope you are ready." Zeus gulped in fear as both Athena and Artemis are going to torture him for what he did. The last thing that was heard was Zeus's painful screams. Two battle droids were walking throughout the castle. They turned away knowing it was not their problem. Meanwhile, with Issei he encounters Ain training alongside the four satanic descendants as Quinella approached him and kisses him on the cheek, with Charlotte pouting with jealousy for failing to get the opportunity, while Ingvild and Valerie wished it was them, but they knew they lost their chance. They knew that they will move on as they shake their thoughts of a possible chance of being with him. "So, Ice. Where are Athena and Artemis?" Issei spoke with a smile looking towards her, having fun with their prisoner. The four satanic descendants understood this and were chuckling, knowing what was happening to Zeus, as Issei looked towards Ain, who was too focused on her training to notice Issei being present. Seeing this, Issei decided to be a little bit naughty as he hid his presence. He walked towards a heavily breathing Ain, and he tapped her shoulder. "Yes, Quinella-sama, give me a moment too." Ain looked up to see it was not Quinella, but it was Issei, and in mere moments, she became beet red and fell to her ground as she exclaimed, I am sorry Issei-sama, I failed to notice you and Issei was chuckling seeing Ain behave like this as she became embarrassed. Her meeting of Issei, someone she saw as a hero and looked up to, was not how she wanted to meet him. He soon put his hand forward and spoke, relax. There is no pressure, just call me Issei. Here, let me help you. Ain embarrassingly took his hand as Issei helped her up, as she looked at Issei with an embarrassed expression, as Issei spoke with a genuine smile, come, let's sit down. Just address me like you do for a regular person. Why yes. Ain spoke while stuttering, as she soon took a seat. Issei gave a glance to the four girls who nodded in understanding, as they knew he wanted to speak to her privately. They had a feeling that since the war is coming to a closure, she should know everything. It was only upon Issei's request that they hid everything from her until he asks her to do so. So Ain, how have you been doing? Issei asked with a genuine smile, to which the girl nodded. I have been doing fine, Issei. Ain spoke with a blushing smile. This was the first time she was alone with a man, outside of her family. She was only alone with her father, and later her brother. She often had a very close bond with her sister, until she decided to join Serzich's side later on. She did not hold a grudge against her, unlike her brother. This was due to her almost being on the same condition as her father, only except in her case, she was sealed in the crystal, to be freed years later courtesy of Issei and his group. She was eternally grateful for Issei saving her and giving her a new life. Anyways, I will get to the point. You see, back then what I told you was what happened years later. But what I didn't tell you was the recent events that have completely shaped the current supernatural world. Ain was surprised by this, as she asked, why? It was because back then, I and the four Satans were uncertain on telling you. The reason being was, let's just say, my past with them was not pretty. Issei spoke with a sad tone, as Ain wondered what this meant. She then asked, what happened? Oh dear, it's a long story, and your sister is one of those that was the reason why my past was not pretty. Ain gulped at this, as Issei recounted everything he had done for the factions, yet always his little brother Daihaide was credited. No matter what he did, he was not cared or loved. Instead he was bullied and humiliated, even abused in some rare instances. Eventually this caused him to one day snap and turn on them. This is exactly what happened to them. He stopped helping them, however their actions against him and many others made Issei and some others turn on them, thus resulting in the formation of the droid faction, and eventually many others joined him. Now, the war is coming to a close. Some would have to make the choice. Either they can serve the factions that have abandoned or mistreated them, or they can serve the droid faction, and ensuring that these factions don't survive for another day mistreating him or humanity or anyone else. It was the end of the factions. Ain was in tears. Her sister had done so much damage to Issei, someone that was so nice and kind. He even saved her and gave her a new life. She was crying tears of sadness as Ain saw her older sister to be a completely different person. She cursed Serzich's for changing her sister into the person she is today. She looked at Issei and spoke with a sad tone, I am sorry for what my sister did to you, Issei. Don't apologize for her doings. Ain.She is to blame for her deeds, and she will pay for how she treated me. There is no exception in that. Not only did she betray the original Lucifer by siding with Serzich's, she followed him like a blind dog, and she did all those deeds to me. Ain sniffled and looked at Issei, understanding why he hated Grafia and the others so much. She already lost a lot quite recently, and eventually she will be the only survivor of the Lucifuge family, due to her brother also potentially dying, due to him being killed during the final battle against them. It's true, Ain, what everything Issei said was true. Ain and Issei turned around to see the four half-breed satanic descendants with them, out of which Quinella and Charlotte had a serious look, while Ingvild and Valerie had a sad look on their faces, as they were themselves taken in by lies of the four Satans via Dai and Ria's Gremory. There is no exception to what Issei said. We all saw how they treated Issei. He was treated like the utmost scum on this planet until the truth was revealed to everyone on live television. The mere fact that everyone was played like a damn fiddle showed how easily they can be manipulated and how selfish they can be, only caring for themselves. Their testament of selling both Laisha and Sekvara were prime examples of that. Charlotte added with anger in her voice, as Ingvild spoke sadly and angrily. Both I and Valerie fell for their lies and deceit, and this is what caused us to harm Issei and do things that we can't even turn back on. They played us like fools, and Dai, he was the worst. He only saw both of us as toys, and the worst part is, they still failed to see their mistakes. Ingvild's words made Ain realize how far they have fallen, and Valerie's words were finally the nail in the coffin. Ain now hated Serzich's and his family for being the reason for so much chaos along with the other leaders. Ingvild is right, I hate myself for believing Kuroka and Rias, but I can't change the past, no matter what I do. But I can change the future by working upon the present. I refuse to fight for the factions that will abandon us without a second thought. Think about it, Ain. Issei was only seen as someone worthwhile because he possessed power, that's it. They don't care about us, they don't care whether we live or die, because they are nothing but selfish idiots who only care about themselves, nothing more, nothing less. Valerie also had a similar tone to Ingvild as Aine could only process as everything, the people she loved were not the same people she knew. Time changed them for the worst, and she hated that she couldn't even call Grafia or Euclid her older siblings. This is what the factions have become, so tell me Aine, do you want to join people like them? Issei asked as Aine shook her head in disgust. She was disgusted by what the factions have become and refused to join them at all costs. No, I will not join them at any costs. Aine spoke angrily, refusing to become like her older sister Grafia in any way as she continued, I will aid you in the final war against the other factions. It is about time we put a stop to them and their actions against not only us, but also against other beings as well. I had a feeling that you would make the right choice, Aine. The one who spoke was Valerie as she responded with a smile of her own, as she spoke, thank you, Valerie-sama. No please call us Valerie, we are friends here, and I am not your superior. Valerie responded with a smile of her own, as the other three satanic descendants all nodded with agreement. Aine soon smiled as she now had several people that cared for her. As Issei looked at the scene with a genuine smile as he thought knowing that sooner or later Grafia will come to know about Aine and will be horrified. He became even more excited knowing what will happen next, since Aine now hates her, and Grafia will be forced to fight against her. He was certainly going to enjoy her downfall as well, alongside her husband who he will kill at the very end. His thoughts were diverted when he saw a text message come up on his device as he spoke, well, it seems like Artemis and Athena are done with playing. I will go check up on them. The girls nodded as Issei soon walked out of the room, they all were soon discussing on what they will be needing to do next. But Issei, he was walking towards Zeus's prison chamber, with Artemis and Athena having satisfied smiles on their faces, as Issei looked at them and spoke. I take it you are done with the torture? Issei asked as the two girls had a smile. Athena cleaned the mortis blade and gave it to Issei as he kept it back in his inventory, with Artemis speaking, I enjoyed every single moment of torturing that bastard, he even went so far as to insult our child, Ice. Issei turned to see Zeus and almost was surprised, he was not the same person the girls left him to be, his face was horribly disfigured, with bumps, bruises, scratches and scars all present on his face. His one eye was missing and his nose was bleeding, several of his teeth were broken, and his ears were bleeding. His neck was completely gone, with his larynx being ripped from his stomach. His body was in a worse condition, his abdomen was bleeding with his stomach and intestines being ripped from inside out. His flesh and bones were exposed in the chest area, revealing his partially broken ribsage. His one arm was gone, ripped apart and dropped to the ground, while his other arm had the same fate as his face, with 3 of his fingers missing, and his arm had flesh and bones revealed. But his lower region, let's just say it was the worst amongst them. His penis was ripped from its location, with it being near his left leg, it had several slashes aimed at it, almost being unrecognizable. He could see the location of his testicles not present, being ripped from the testicle sac. They primarily focused on that area since Zeus was known to gape and even assault women, causing their lives to be completely miserable. He was not shown mercy in that region, and speaking of his legs, his one leg was completely ripped from his body, destroyed leaving only a mangled leg which showed flesh, bones and blood coming out from that area. The other leg had some of his toes ripped like his arm, with bones and flesh being displayed throughout. In addition, his whole body was twitching and twirling with pain, this was because of the mortis blade being so highly concentrated with Slayer magic that even a small cut could seriously damage any supernatural being. Athena and Artemis did even more damage to Zeus, making his last moments miserable. Issei shuddered at what the girls had done, not because he pitied Zeus, but because he knew if he crossed any of his mates, he may not see the next day. Even Drake was fearful of crossing any of the women, since an angry wife is more scary than any droid or even Great Red himself. Issei tried to keep his composure and spoke with a sigh. You know, I am a bit sad that you did not save some for me. Athena and Artemis shook their heads as Artemis spoke, we wish for you to do the honors, Ice. Artemis walked towards him and wrapped her arms around him, as Athena shouted in jealousy, no fair Artie, you can't hug Issei all to yourselves. Athena soon wrapped her arms around Issei, as Zeus watched the scene while gritting what remains of his teeth. He couldn't do anything but watch the scene of how Issei took away his daughters away from him. Issei, on the other hand, calmed the girls, assuring that they will both get their time, as Issei turned to Zeus, who lost his anger and became fearful. Issei then spoke, you know Zeus, your anger is still so unjustified in every manner, your 2 daughters love me for who they are, and one of them is even pregnant with my child. But you will never see your own grandchild be born in this world. Issei spoke the last part with a mocking tone, as Zeus became even more fearful as Issei looked at the girls, you might want to step back a little. The 2 girls nodded as Issei decided to generate some flames in his hands, as he spoke, you see, Zeus. I will make your final moments as painful as possible, since the girls wanted me to perform your final moments. I will gladly honor their request. These flames belong to Drake himself, and you know what is going to happen once they hit you, right? Zeus was at his final moments, as Issei continued sadly, I would love to torture you Zeus, but chuckles what is the point in playing with a broken toy. I mean, look at you, you can't scream to my amusement, or even cry. So it's time to put you out of commission. Cold permanently. Issei's words made Zeus almost shit himself, but without his private parts to do so, he couldn't do anything but be fearful of what is to come for him. Issei soon breathed the flames towards him, causing Zeus to scream in pain. No one had an empathy for the former king of Olympus, as even Athena and Artemis did not see him in the eyes. Once there was nothing left, the trio walked away knowing there is no Olympus or Zeus left. Scene change. Time skip brought to you by Chibi Issei learning how to create the Star Forge. 3 days later, Highschool residence, 9:30 am. Issei was seated amongst members of the droid faction, while opposite to them was Shiva and Indra, the two representatives of Hindu faction, as Issei asked with a smile. So tell me. What brings the god of destruction and the heavenly king to my humble abode? Issei looked at Shiva and Indra, both of whom had neutral expressions, but internally they were concerned. This meeting would decide whether their faction survives for another day or perishes at the hands of him and his army. Shiva knew his utmost limit was at Malak, and he knew Issei was stronger than him, and if from what he knew was right, then Great Red and Office are also working with him. 3 dragons that eclipse him in terms of strength and power. He knew that his faction will not survive, and unlike those idiotic faction leaders who think they can beat Issei, he knows his upper limits and can't face them. Is it fear for what I'll do? Is it concern for what I'm about to do? Tell me Shiva, what is it? Shiva took a deep breath and responded, I am not going to lie, fear is one of the reasons we are here. Okay? Issei responded as he continued, what else? Concern, and I wanted to know your thoughts about what you think of us Hindu gods, like what is your difference in thoughts when you think of me, as compared to when you think of Odin or Zeus. Issei gave it a thought for a while, as he spoke. I am not going to lie, amongst the gods, I watched as you were the only one that did not give me the stink eye or had hatred like Zeus or Odin. They were easily taken in by Dai's lies and turned against me. What were your thoughts when you first heard and joined the alliance? Issei asked Shiva and Indra, to which the heavenly king spoke. I was someone that was noticeable, I had a feeling that the kid is completely rotten. That is why I threatened as a boy, to deal with a boy so that he does not overstep his boundaries. Seems like he did not listen to me. Indra spoke sadly, as Shiva said his own words, when I was contacted by Azazel before the battle against Trahexa, he proposed me joining, but my visions were telling me something else. They told me about Armageddon, which would be caused by Trahexa. I take it that it was you that stopped the beast, right? You were right on that. And it was not easy, if anything, took me a few months of mastering the seals that were initially used to seal the beast. Issei remembered him working day and night, and some cases having sleepless nights to do so. It was worth it in the end, as he was able to take down Trahexa. But unfortunately, Dai once again took credit for his actions. And even in the shadows, I have been dealing with RageRevan Lucifer, who has been alive and taken him down permanently, along with the Neo Chaos Brigade, making sure that they never pose a problem to anyone in the future. Valerie was surprised by this information, she never was told about this. She was going to ask her later in the future. Shiva took all information into consideration. He has always been the true hero, yet the factions have been so blind to that. Yet, look at how I was treated. If you noticed my very first meeting when Malak attacked the factions, you saw how many were showing outright disdain or disgust, right? Shiva could sense the hostility increase in the room as soon as he entered all those months ago. He knew what this meant, that they hated him for the now lies that Dai had spoken. However, upon their first meeting neither Shiva nor his faction saw Issei act like the way. He was the polar opposite, making Shiva have slight doubts on whether the factions were truthful or not, but this was distracted when the droid faction had attacked them, causing him to focus on them instead of Issei instead. He knew that Issei does not want to help him, and the factions have been trying to force against him to help them, only to be ended up almost dead by his hands. Regardless, why did you not turn against the factions when you had the chance? Like you easily could have left them, and none of them had the power to even stop you in any way. Issei asked Shiva, who responded while shaking his head. We were not certain whether you would attack us or not, we were not certain whether you hated us or not. You showed that you didn't want us around your place. That alone gave us mixed signals, along with the fact that some of your house guests were still part of the factions, and you even let Team DXD members in your house back then. Issei understood what Shiva was trying to say. He had to show that he tolerated their existence, with the Team DXD members that is, while in reality he hated them a lot, especially Riaz and her peerage, along with Sona and her peerage to name a few. I had to keep myself under disguise, although in reality. Issei took a deep sigh and responded, I hated all those that were still affiliated with the factions back then. Especially the fact that we live in the same roof. Issei's words made Shiva nod in understanding. It was no secret that he hated Riaz and Sona, along with those that followed them and their factions, for making his life miserable. I see. And from what I know, they even tried to invade your privacy, right? Shiva asked sadly, to which those girls who had their private time with Issei ruined by Riaz gritted their teeth in anger, remembering how spoilt and selfish Riaz was. Additionally, they were happy that Riaz was dead, never to return, thanks to her being burnt by Drake's flames. Indeed she did. The worst part, she still demanded, not requested me to do things she wanted to, like she thinks the world revolves around her. The good thing was that I swiftly put her in her place every time she tried. Issei spoke with a smile, making Shiva nod. In all his meeting, so far Issei did not do anything unjust or what was considered wrong in his eyes. While on the surface genocide was wrong, Issei's actions against the factions and their leaders were justified and right. Especially towards them who will keep demanding and irritating them to help him at all costs. This did not end well for anyone that tried to do so, with Ajuka being one of the earlier victims for this sake. Indra was also analyzing what Issei said, like Shiva, and he also had to give respect to the boy. He did what he did was right, even now his actions against the factions he had a reason, and that was they intend to harm his loved ones to gain an upper hand, since they did not have access to Samuel's poison, due to Issei destroying the entity months ago. Normally, unlike Shiva, Indra's manner of finding out a person's true intention was combat, where he would identify by the strikes and assaults whether the person was known to be a monster or not, or whether he was a good person or not. But with Issei, he decided to listen to Shiva and not chose to fight. He knew that the supernatural factions have their days numbered, and they still haven't learned their lessons, and still want to find a way to harm those he cares for and loves. I see. Shiva spoke after a while, as he then asked, but what made you kill Milika's Gremory? He was just a mere kid. Shiva had heard from this due to the news being public at this point, as Issei took a deep breath and responded. The faction leaders tried to use my unborn child and my pregnant maid Artemis as a hostage. When that happened, I was beyond angry, and we made an example of what will happen if they would go after my child. I wanted Serziches to show what would happen if he tried anything against my family. This was a message even to the other leaders as well: if they harm my family, they are as good as dead. Issei's words made the god of destruction and the heavenly king horrified at this revelation. The mere fact that they went after a child speaks volumes of their atrocities that they are willing to commit. Indra was furious at the factions, while Shiva was disgusted by what the faction leaders. This conversation made them back away from the alliance completely as Shiva spoke. Although what you did was wrong, like always you had a good reason, and now we also have no intention of working with the alliance. Wait, you are planning to? Issei was cut by Indra as he responded, indeed, we are backing out from the alliance. The mere fact that they used Artemis and her unborn child to find a way to weaken you showed us they are not the people we wish to be allied with. And we will not pose a problem to you in any way, so as long as you don't harm us, we won't harm you in any way. And as for humanity, we don't look down upon humanity like many gods and goddesses do, we actually, so I thought you would know that. Shiva spoke with a sigh as he continued, so what do you say? Issei Haidu. We both should mind our own paths, and we won't cross each other unless necessary. Issei thought for a moment. The Hindu faction is no longer a threat to him. He had a feeling that Shiva was not as bad as the other gods, he just did not want to believe it. Now he sees it firsthand, and not just Shiva, but even the rest of the Hindu gods were completely different and better, as opposed to Greek, Norse, or even Shinto gods. I accept. I see no reason to reject this proposal. As long as we keep to our own paths and not interfere in each other's, we should be fine and not harm each other. Issei spoke much to Shiva and Indra's relief, since their goal was to talk with Issei such that he does not wipe out their faction, as he continued. At first I was surprised when Nyx contacted me stating that you two wanted to talk to me, and when I was expecting the faction leaders to show up, I was expecting a full-on battle to happen here. Shiva and Indra agreed to that. If it were any of the other faction leaders showing up here, things would have become much worse, like Serziches would have at least damaged the house for instance, and harmed some of his family members, due to what he is going through. And again, when you came in peace, I was even more surprised and accepted the talk. You wish to leave me and my faction alone, and I shall do the same. And I accept to not harm the Hindu faction, on two conditions. Out of which one was to not intervene in each other's path. And the second one? Shiva asked out of curiosity and a bit of concern. The second one is that you must not help the remaining factions of the alliance in any way. Cut off all ties and abandon them completely. They will only be the cause of your death along with those that follow you in any way. That is my second condition. Issei spoke seriously, causing them to nod in understanding, as Shiva spoke in acceptance. Those are conditions we accept completely. We were going to cut ties with them anyway, so we accept this condition, and we won't be helping them in any way as well. That is all then. If you wish, you can leave. Issei spoke with a serious tone, as the two Hindu gods nodded and teleported out of there. Issei is left alone with the rest of the droid faction members, as he spoke to Malak. Are the stations ready for our next attack? Malak nodded as he responded, indeed they are, all they need is your signal, and new ships are also ready for our next attack. That is good. But we don't need that much droids or resources for our next attack. Many were surprised by this, as they wondered why Issei was not planning to use a huge fleet for their next attack, since he wanted to expand a bit on his army, adding more ships to his fleet. But why? I mean, did you not ask for more production? Kalani asked with a tone of surprise. Some like Athena, to name a few, understood why Issei did not want to use too much resources or droids for the attack. Because our next attack won't be that intensive. Yes, we will be attacking a faction, but we won't be needing that much strength for the attack, and we need to prepare for the upcoming final battle, which will happen sooner than you think. Issei explained to the people as they all understood what Issei was going to do and which faction he is going to attack next. After all, the next faction we will be attacking is the… Issei spoke with a grin on his face. The Vampire Faction. Chapter 41. Vampiric Exorcism. Underworld, 9:30 AM. While Issei was having a conversation and talk with Shiva about him leaving the factions for good and not being a problem to him and his entire faction. The other faction leaders were having a discussion on how this power can be used to deal with Issei Haidu. The only one not present was Serzich's due to him still grieving the loss of his son and sister. So Azazel. What's this idea you have? Azazel looked at the one who asked her the question, as he looked towards Falbium, who only nodded as he brought out a chess piece. However, it was no ordinary chess piece, it seemed to be a king piece as it was made out of a red crystal. Underworld, 9:30 AM. While Issei was having a conversation and talk with Shiva about him leaving the factions for good and not being a problem to him and his entire faction. The other faction leaders were having a discussion on how this power can be used to deal with Issei Haidu. The only one not present was Serzich's due to him still grieving the loss of his son and sister. So Azazel. What's this idea you have? Azazel looked at the one who asked her the question, as he looked towards Falbium, who only nodded as he brought out a chess piece. However, it was no ordinary chess piece, it seemed to be a king piece as it was made out of a red crystal. Is that? Michael asked with surprise, to which Azazel responded, indeed, it is what you see, the king piece, a tournament piece that was banned from raiding games due to too dangerous, due to the possibility of being abused by devils who had malicious intentions towards the government and could even harm the government. So how does it work? Amaterasu asked. She heard rumors of the king piece increasing a devil's power exponentially, but she did not know the exact statistics. Simple, the king piece was used by devils like Bediz Abaddon and Roygun Belphegor to reach higher in their ranks. Azazel explained to everyone, causing them to nod in understanding as he continued. They were declared ultimate class due to the usage of the king piece, which it can strengthen the user by several folds. The strengthening is possible on a magnitude of 10 or 100, as it can elevate a high-class devil into power that is comparable to ultimate class, and even strengthening some users to Satan-class powers. All of its users were capable of becoming the top rating game players, reaching the rank of the top 10 rating game players. Now, keep this in mind. If it can turn a high-class devil into a being on an ultimate-class devil. Just imagine on how strong it can make Serzich's, who is already a super devil, into. He could potentially transform into as strong as even Drager Albion in their primes. The more king pieces we add, the more stronger he becomes, eventually reaching. Amaterasu completes the sentence. Reaching dragon god levels potentially. But how will we stack more than one king piece in his body? Azazel thought for a moment as he responded, we could use multiple pieces just like how Aika was reincarnated as a devil. We could develop a device that could channel the power of multiple king pieces into one. Then, we can insert it into Serzich's. Azazel's words made the other leaders agree to it. The only downside we have to this plan is that who is already too strong, or if it is used by someone who has a special ability, an overload may occur, as in the worst case, it would endanger their lives. So, we will have to make sure the king piece is upgraded to the point of actually strengthening Serzich's and not overloading. Azazel explained as the other leaders nodded. This was their only hope, and they can't give up on this right now. Additionally, the risk to Serzich's safety was also present, but there was nothing they could do. The only way to win was to go down this route, since if this fails, then they all will die a horrible death and no one will save them from the droid faction's wrath. What's worse is that Shiva has not been in contact with any of them, and fears of him leaving are prevalent across the leaders. His strength along with the Hindu faction is needed if they need to combat Issei and the droid faction to defeat them and destroy any potential chance of threat. Speaking of Aika, how is the girl doing? Amaterasu asked with concern, to which Azazel responded, anything but well, her family is either dead or turned traitors, she is all alone with only her partner Dragon Tiamat and her friends keeping her company, she needs to recover as well, like Serzich's. Poor girl. It's a pity that her damned brothers have no care for her in any way. Amaterasu spoke angrily, feeling pity for Aika, as Elemental continued, regardless, we should probably start arming ourselves even more. Issei can attack any of us soon, as is Sama. You should prepare the device that would be able to use the enhancing properties of the King Piece without harming Surziches or backfiring on us. I will. Azazel spoke seriously, he has found a way of defeating Issei, and he was not going to let it get away. They ended the meeting and all teleported out of there, with Falbium heading to his home to take some rest before informing Surziches on what he needs to do. Romania, 2:30 p.m. The vampire faction, a faction that have been divided by centuries due to two houses, the male-led Teeps clan and the female-led Carmilla clan. The two clans have been at war for centuries, despite being from the same race. Their relationship of hostility was taken advantage of by the Cows Brigade, which started to cause even more friction and trouble for the vampire faction in general. The end result caused many vampires to be wiped out from the surface of the planet due to them accepting the harsh treatment of their kin for so long. The reason was that even inside the clans, the opposite hex was the one that suffered injustices against the dominant hex. For instance, the Carmilla clan would often discriminate and commit atrocities against the males of the clan, while Teeps clan would do the same against the females of the clan. This caused several of them to turn on their clan and eventually accept being mass-produced dragons. Additionally, even those that were pure-blooded joined Cows Brigade, further dwindling their numbers. Now, due to the droid faction's attacks, their already reducing numbers were being reduced even more. This is due to the droid faction having full access to the weaponry that act as a weakness to their existence, even after they use the Holy Grail to try and make themselves immune to their usual weaknesses of sunlight and holy weapons. The reason is that they used strong ultraviolet radiation, which is highly concentrated sunlight that would easily disrupt the protection that they had due to the Holy Grail. Said light was further enchanted courtesy of Issei's Holy Grail, nullifying the effects of the Holy Grail, courtesy of Valerie. Currently, Issei was present a few kilometers away from the main vampire territories of Romania as he looked at the generals who had arrived. The only ones that were absent were Artemis, Athena, Miyuki, Aine, Gabriel and Elizabeth. Their forces have also been reduced due to them not desiring to bring any army with them, only a few squads, here and there. Okay everyone, here is the plan. Vampires, even though they have immunity towards sunlight or half-blood in most of the purebloods, due to the Holy Grail. We have weaponry that can deal with them effectively. Issei spoke with a smile, as he responded, Artemis gave us cloaking spells which can hide our presence, so here is what we are going to do. The ones present listened intently as to what Issei was going to say as he spoke, thanks to the intel given to us by the Mocha sisters. Each of the mansions have a ventilation shaft which provides them with cold air to keep their environment cool and collective. The reason is that vampires are creatures of the night, they can't thrive properly in a non-dark and cool environment. So our first goal is to eliminate any vampires that can potentially ambush us in the corridors. Additionally, due to the fact that they can manipulate darkness, they can blend in and unleash their attacks upon us. The most vulnerable ones are those that are part human, as they can harm them the most. Issei's words made both Quinella, LaFolia and Charlotte nod seriously as they knew that they can be vulnerable to ambushes. So here is our plan to deal with the vampires. I have created small grenades for this mission that release strong and enchanted ultraviolet rays. They have the same stealth spells Artemis had placed on us before we left. These grenades nullify the enchanting done thanks to the Holy Grail that Valerie had done on the vampires. We will deploy them and control them using the ventilation shafts. This will navigate them to different areas in the castle. Once we do and once they are in position we will detonate them. Issei explained to his allies who all nodded in agreement. Now once we are done, we will wait for a few minutes since UV light can be potentially harmful. The grenade explosion would be such that it would be silent, not creating too much noise, and taking down the designated vampires before they could even react. That way we can make sure the corridors are cleaned of any vampires. Issei then took a deep breath and continued. There are 6 vampire clans, 3 belonging to the Carmilla faction, and 3 belonging to the Teeps faction, each of them have several mansions. So we will be separating into groups of 2 for each mansion, with each being accompanied by an army. We will eliminate any stragglers that may have survived and kill the nobles of each clan, minus myself, who will be going straight to confront Elmenhold alongside Mocha Yura and Mocha Amuk. Everyone nodded in understanding to Issei's plan, as he continued. The vampires were already at a decline due to the continuous wars, causing them to turn innocent humans into vampires to replenish their numbers. However, despite this, the humans turned vampires are treated very badly and worse than scum. This is due to the vampires being known to be very prideful and arrogant beings in nature. Issei explained to them, as he continued. We will be wiping out the vampire race today afternoon. There will be no survivors left once we are done. Thankfully, due to the less numbers, we can easily deal with them and wipe them out in just a matter of hours, or even less than that. This war should be the easiest war we will encounter, so let us finish this quickly and head home. The people present nodded in agreement as Issei looked towards the Karnstein castle with anger and hatred in his eyes, remembering more of his past with Elmenhold. He was going to make her pay. Scene change. The team soon used stealth tactics to enter closer to the vampire territory. Up until now, no vampire was able to sense them in any way. He looked to see two guards guarding the main area. Issei looked towards the Mocha sisters, and they nodded. The two sisters commanded the assassin droids who quickly went and killed the vampires with holy blades, causing them to be vaporized instantly as one of the droids spoke. "All clear, General." Mocha got the message and relayed it to Issei. The group soon walked towards the castle, and Malak spoke. "So what now?" Issei looked at Malak as he spoke. "This is where we will relay our first bomb." Issei brought out his grenade and threw it at the ventilation shaft connected outside. He soon brought out a datapad. "Now we control it to our designated spot." Issei controlled the grenade as it headed towards the shaft and fell down a specific spot and remained hidden. The corridor was a place where many vampires were present. "That is how we will deal with the vampires. By the time Elmenhold and Valerie come to know anything, it will be too late." Malak nodded in understanding as Issei looked at everyone and spoke. "Your job will be simple, take a few assassin droids, who all have been equipped with holy blades, and do the same thing I did. Send them to a place where vampires will be the most prevalent." The teams nodded, as they knew what they had to do. Each split it in groups of 2 generals and a few droids, the only exception being Issei and the Mocha sisters who were in the number of 3. They kept doing this for every mansion, eliminating the guards outside, and then followed up with them placing the bombs at different corridors. This continued for a short 30-50 minutes as they kept doing it. Until all bombs have been placed, they all then reunited to the same spot as Ingvild spoke. "The bombs have been planted." Issei responded with a smile, "Good job everyone, and did anyone find out about what happened?" "No, we made sure of that, someone managed to spot us, however the assassin droid managed to kill that fool before he could cause a problem." Gondal spoke with a sigh as Issei nodded. "I see. Don't let that happen, otherwise it would ruin the mission." Gondal nodded in understanding and apologized, to which Issei shook his head and responded, "Don't be sorry Gondal, nothing wrong happened, so we should be fine." Issei gave an assuring smile, to which Gondal also gave a wry smile. Vader then asked, gathering their attention. "So what now, my lord?" Issei looked at Vader as he gave a malicious grin. "Now we begin the legendary light show of death." Issei spoke mockingly as he brought out the datapad and triggered the button, knowing what will happen next. Meanwhile, when this was going on, Elmenhold and Valerie were having their own conversation, with Elmenhold speaking. "Okay. I have spoken to the faction leaders, hopefully we do find a way to stop him." Elmenhold's words made Valerie surprised as she responded. "But how? How will we stop someone of his caliber? He was able to take down Ajuka, Auden and several other extremely strong beings, and I doubt that is even the strongest he has ever been in." Valerie then continued sadly, "The worst part is that Gasper has betrayed me and turned on me." "No." Elmenhold shook her head as she responded, "That is not true." "How? Did you not see how happy he was when Asgard was destroyed by the Death Star? Haidu has changed him for the worst." Valerie retorted, to which Elmenhold responded. "No, Gasper was not the same. If you didn't notice, that was a battle-crazed gaze, and Gasper was never a battle maniac." Valerie. "So this means he is being controlled." Elmenhold then gave an assuring smile as she responded, "There is still hope for him, and we can save him." "But how?" Valerie asked with a desperate tone as Elmenhold responded, "Our hope is Surzich's. He is the only hope that can beat Issei. It is the only way to stop him." "Seriously, but how?" Elmenhold only smiled as she told the plan, as Valerie knew this would be their final hope. However, unbeknownst to them, they won't be alive to see their plan succeed. Back at the different sections of the mansions, explosions of UV light had taken place, causing the first vampire to be disintegrated. The other realized that this was the droid faction's doing, however it was too late to do anything as even he got disintegrated. Outside, the mansions had massive light shows, however, due to the vampire mansion's designs, the nobles were unaware of what had happened, as Issei looked at Vader and responded, "Told you it would be a light show." The lights disappeared moments later, as Vader responded, "So now will we proceed with the next part of the plan?" "Indeed." Vader. Split into 2 and take the droids with you and eliminate any stragglers you come across before you eliminate the head of the house or the noble. I will personally deal with Elmenhold and Valerie. Speaking of Valerie, Issei looks towards Malakota and asks, "Mind if I borrow Grafayake Naka Gasper for this mission?" Malakota looks at Gasper, who nods as she speaks. "Sure, but you needn't ask for my permission, my lord." Issei nodded as he looked onto the vampire faction and gave a grin as he spoke. "Alright everyone, let's finish this mission and head home. I don't want to even step foot in this damn place." Everyone else nodded in understanding as they all split up and decided to deal with the vampires one by one. Scene change. Elmenhold and Valerie were discussing the plan on how to deal with Issei Haidu when the doors to the room suddenly exploded, startling them. They wondered who could it be, only to become completely pale when they saw the attackers. It was Issei Haidu, Mocha Amak, Mocha Yura and finally Gaspar Vladi, whose body was taken up by Graffiacane. In a while, Elman. Issei spoke coldly as Elmenhold and Valerie were shivering. Valerie was even more pale when she saw Gaspar as she spoke. Gaspar, it's me Valerie. Gaspar remained silent as he gave a glare to his former friend, Valerie, then looked towards Issei and angrily demanded. What have you done to him, you monster? Issei only shook his head as he spoke. Instead of telling you teeps, how about I show you? Issei gave a glance to Gaspar as he nodded. Issei then spoke, you see, your friend is just a walking corpse at this point. He is now taken over by the Malabranch Graffiacane. Gaspar's body soon starts to mutate as it changes its skin color into a grayish-black in color, with having 2 wings and sort of a dog-like face which was covered by an outer skin layer. Gaspar's new body becomes even more bulkier and stronger. Issei looked at him and noted he looked like a gargoyle. Gaspar roared in the afternoon, making Valerie flinch as he looked at her scared face and spoke, so what do you think of your friend? Isn't he good looking now? Valerie could only grit her teeth in anger and helplessness. You damned monster, how could you even do this? Elmenhold spoke with anger in her voice as Issei retorted. Oh, don't get me started on you Elmenhold, you are no better than Riaz in any way. You tried to separate me from my only friends that actually cared and loved me for who I am. You blindly listened to my brother and made my life miserable, Mocha Amak added. Not to mention you outright threatened in harming our icon for your die. You are no better than a monster, Elmenhold, but then again, all pure-blooded vampires are known to be rotten and selfish beings, aren't they? I totally agree sister, you tormented icon to please someone who only cared for your body. You made his life a living nightmare, well you suppressed us from doing anything and threatened to harm him if we ever were made contact with him. Don't you remember Elmenhold? The trio angrily retorted as Elmenhold was taken aback, fear present in her face. The 3 know everything on what she had done as Issei spoke. Girls, we are wasting time with this girl. I need to take care of my pregnant mate and that is way better than arguing with this hypocrite. Let's end this once and for all. The Mocha sisters nodded in agreement as Mocha Yura asked. Icon? Mind if we handle Elmenhold for you? Issei responded with a smile as he spoke. Sure, make sure it is painful. You bet we will make it painful, Mocha Yura responded as the Mocha sisters headed towards Elmenhold, making her fearful. She had no choice to fight the monster's half-blood dampers as Issei looked at Gaspar and spoke. Graffiacane, can I just call you Gaspar? It is much more easier. Graffiacane spoke with a tone full of acceptance. I am, but your lowly servant my lord, you shouldn't ask me questions like that to me. Don't speak like that Graffiacane. Issei was about to continue when he saw Valerie trying to escape as Issei responded by creating a teleportation block zone, making her remain in that position. You are one of my generals and I don't treat my allies as my servants, but as friends and partners. So raise your head up and fight for me. Graffiacane was surprised by this, however it soon changed to happiness as he thought. You were right Lady Malakota, he is different and way better than those that once used us as weapons. Graffiacane responded with a smile, thank you, my lord, and you can call me by whatever is comfortable to you. Very well, our job is to deal with Valerie, let's finish her together. Graffiacane spoke in response, it would be an honor to fight alongside you, my lord. Valerie was in complete shock seeing Issei able to inspire loyalty in his troops, but by how he treats them as his allies and not his servants. She knew her chances of surviving this battle are next to none, but she was not going to go down without a fight. Being a damper had some benefits, meaning she is immune to the traditional weaknesses a pure-blooded vampire would have, like sunlight. That unfortunately did not stop Valerie from being overwhelmed by stronger opponents. The vampire tried to use her sacred gear to revive several evil dragons. Graffiacane understood this was Sephiroth Graal's doing, as Issei scanned the evil dragons, their power was just above average. Not something that would hinder his progress. You call these dragons pathetic? Issei spoke mockingly, angering Valerie to some extent as Issei decided to bring in 2 very familiar evil dragons. That being Grendel and Layton. Balance breaker Issei spoke as the book of conceptual records came in front of him. Valerie was unnerved, wondering which sacred gears he was going to use. Issei noted Valerie had several weaknesses he could exploit. One of them being her very nature as a female damper. Despite dampers being immune to traditional weaknesses a regular vampire has, they still find discomfort when faced in front of their weaknesses that they have. The stronger the weakness, i.e., the more potent the holy weapons are, the more dangerous side effects it has and can be potentially lethal as well, keyword being potential. Soon enough, Drag announced with a growl, balance breaker. Dragons of neutrality. Soon enough, 2 giant dragons that looked identical to Grendel and Layton showed up, however like in Valerie's battle against Issei months ago, they were having purple flames that belonged to the sacred gear Incinerate Anthem. The flames were holy flames, or more accurately one of the strongest holy flames anyone could ever procure. They are strong enough to even kill a god. The balance breaker that Issei used belonged to his variation of the Incinerate anthem as he looked towards Graffiacane, who seemed to be sweating. Issei understood this was due to his nature of being a demonic being as well as inheriting the body of a damper. Issei understood what he had to do and spoke. Keep your distance, Gasper, and only used ranged attacks. Your sacred gear, Forbidden Baylor View, should work from a distance as well. Use it to immobilize Valerie and don't step near the flames. Graffiacane understood this as he took to the skies and his eyes changed to maroon in color as he stopped Valerie dead in her tracks. Brendel Layden spoke in the duo's stead, leave it to us, Issei. The duo flame dragons unleashed their holy flames towards Valerie, causing her to take the entire brunt of the flames, causing her to take the full extent of the flames. She managed to survive, but she was injured. In response, Valerie unleashed her dragons and commanded them to attack Grendel and Layden. She also sent a batch to deal with Issei Haidu, as some of the dragons charged with claws. Issei closed his eyes, these dragons were nothing but ants to his power. Gasper came in the middle and unleashed a strong laser beam, completely disintegrating the dragons into nothingness as he spoke. My lord, are you alright? Issei nodded as he spoke, yeah, you needn't worry about me, if they come closer, I can handle them. Issei looked at Grendel and Layden and gave a nod to the dragons. The dragons unleashed their holy flames, cutting down the scores of the dragons down to several numbers. Graffiacane Gasper was surprised by how tenacious Issei can be. He noticed one dragon trying to sneak up to him, only for Issei to decapitate the evil dragon with a sword. Worrying for nothing, Graffiacane decided to do what Issei wanted him to do. Swiftly, he unleashed another strong laser beam at the defending dragons, who were completely burned down into nothingness before anything could happen. Valerie tried to revive more dragons, however Issei saw this. He was not going to let her become a problem for him anymore. With the mortis blade, he quickly slashed Valerie's chest, causing her to scream in pain. Valerie held her chest in pain, as Issei did not stop. He quickly got his sword in a stabbing position and aimed it straight at her heart, but she was able to dodge. Unfortunately, the poison inside the mortis blade was effective against any supernatural being. As it started to sizzle the wound on Valerie's chest, she shouted in pain, trying to avoid the strikes only for Issei to walk towards her and speak. Any last words? Valerie gritted her teeth in pain and anger. While being helpless, she was not strong enough to lay even a dent on Issei or damage Issei. The dragons were wiping out the remaining of the dragons as Graffiacane flew beside Issei as Issei spoke. Graffiacane, on my signal, annihilator. Make sure there is no trace that remains. Graffiacane nodded as Valerie responded, Gasper, please listen, if you are still in there, you are not a monster, you don't have to listen to this monster. Please remember the good times we had, remember how we used to play together. Monster? Valerie, remember on how you admonished and humiliated me. Because of what Gasper told you? Look at what happened to your friend, Gasper, just look, he is gone, there is nothing left of him. He is just a husk, a skin for one of my Malabranch, that being Graffiacane. You call me a monster, but in reality, I am just what you faction leaders have made me. Issei looked at Valerie apathetically, causing her to weep. Her friend is gone, and his body is being used as a husk by the Malabranch Graffiacane. Issei also had to prepare himself in case Gasper does try to overwhelm Graffiacane. He had both Alpheka Tyrant and his variation of Sephiroth Grawl, ready to subdue and command Gasper's soul if it tried to escape or overwhelm Graffiacane. Finish this, Graffiacane, I can't stand her at all, you too Layden, Grendel. Graffiacane responded in kind. As you wish, my lord. Issei walked away as Valerie looked up to see the two dragons and one gargoyle charging their final attacks. She gave a teary-eyed smile as she muttered her final words. Gasper. The trio unleashed their final attacks, destroying her from existence as she had tears from her. Valerie was killed that day as Grendel and Layden went away knowing their job was done as Graffiacane reverted back to his normal Gasper form as Issei spoke. The job, Graffiacane. Graffiacane nodded and spoke, thank you, my lord. Meanwhile, Elmenhold was being trashed around by the Mocha sisters who were demolishing her in every way, with Mocha speaking. You know how many days I have been awaiting to destroy you Elmenhold, especially for what you have done to her icon. Mocha followed it up with a leg slam aimed at Elmenhold's head, causing her to be thrown to the ground like a pebble. Elmenhold tried to wake up, however Mocha was not going to let that happen. Using the ground below, she created a puddle of flame magic with the intent of burning Elmenhold alive. She barely dodged the attack and transformed into a flock of bats. The bats fluttered around as Mocha slammed one to the ground with a single punch, while Mocha followed it with a burst of fire magic aimed at the rest, incinerating several of them. Mocha was scanning which one had the Elmenhold's main consciousness. She could see one particular bat fleeing from them as she exclaimed. There Mocha looked at her sister, who gave a nod of understanding. Mocha charged up another magic circle, and this time it was electric magic circle as she unleashed several bolts of electricity at the bats, causing them to be disintegrated. Seizing the opportunity, Mochiyura dashed towards the bat that was fleeing and grabbed her by her fist. She quickly followed it up by throwing the creature up in the air and followed it by hand by a kick aimed to its chest. This forcefully caused Ilmenhal to transform back into her human form, where she ended up puking bodily fluids, while Mochiyura looked at her coldly. While Mocha Amuk practiced magic, Mochiyura was on the physical side of attacks. Her blows were enough to give concussions to even the ultimate and seriously damage low Satan class devils. That didn't mean Mochiyura did not know magic and Mocha Amuk did not know any physical attacks. Ready to finish this, sister? Mocha Amuk asked Mochiyura as she responded, thought you'd never ask. Mochiyura followed it with a slam to her lower back, causing Ilmenhal to scream in pain, but she did not stop there. She jumped up in the air as Mocha Amuk followed it with a burning flame magic spell as Ilmenhal started to scream in pain. Once she stopped, Ilmenhal was groaning in pain. She looked towards the Mocha sisters in fear. The sisters were soon joined by with Issei and Gasper as Mochiyura asked, so is that damper dead? Issei nodded as he spoke, yep, you can thank Rafayakane for that, he was the one to kill her. Ilmenhal gritted her teeth in anger as Issei noticed this and walked to a beaten down Ilmenhal as he spoke. Oh, don't be angry, you knew that your time will come soon, damned vampire. Now where is your arrogance gone? Where is your superiority complex gone? It's all down the drain, that is where it is gone. You pure-blooded vampires were always arrogant, but the fact that there are people that have slain your kind before has never changed you in any way. Your arrogance makes even devils look like saints. Issei stomps on Ilmenhal, causing her to flinch. She closes her eyes as tears falls from them, knowing what is about to happen. Her whole race is about to be annihilated and there was nothing they could do about it. It's time to end this, ladies, if you may. Issei walked behind as the Mocha sisters charged up their magic attacks. Ilmenhal shouted in all her anger. Issei Haidu, today you may have won this battle and you may defeat and eradicate our kind, but know this, you will lose this war, that is my promise to you. Issei only scoffed in response as he spoke. No matter what you do, Ilmenhal, no matter what your factions do, let me tell you a trade secret. Juggernaut drive is not even my strongest level of strength. Keep this in mind, the faction leaders are nothing but ants to my true power. Ilmenhal lost her anger and became shocked as Issei spoke, yes, so even if you come at me with your strongest, you can't stand to the level of gods, and even if somehow Surziches use them, even then, he won't be able to beat me. Issei spoke coldly as he walked away. The Mocha sisters annihilated her, leaving no trace of Ilmenhal behind. She was dead, and with that marked the defeat and fall of the vampire faction. Well, I guess that's it then. The Mocha sisters nodded as Mocha Amuk spoke, hey Issei. Can you do us a favor? Sure, girls, what is wrong? The girls started to get closer as the two wrapped their arms around Issei and spoke, it's been a while since we have grabbed our drink and we will have ours tonight. Girls, wait, no, the vampires opened their mouth and nibbled his neck on each side as they made a noise. Jew. Asper Graphicaine shook his head watching the scene. If her lady wanted to win his affection, there is still a lot she needed to work on. Scene change. Everyone was waiting for Issei and the two Mochas come out, the girls having a smile and Issei having a pale look, however he soon composed himself. Gasper had a neutral expression instead. So are the vampires down? Malak nodded as he spoke for everyone's dead. Indeed. This includes Lord Vladi, Lord Manther and Lady Carmilla to name a few, they are all dead. They never even saw us coming, you should see the look of surprise on their faces. Grievous exclaimed in happiness as Malakota responded. That was the best part, the shock on their faces was palpable, and then the fear. Ugh. Malakota shuddered in happiness as she continued, I love the fear and dread on their faces. I know, right, that was amazing, Grievous exclaimed in response as the two generals chuckled in agreement, causing everyone to sweat drop, with Vader asking confused. Do these two share one brain cell? Malak responded with a sort of amused yet annoyed tone. Well, they are kindred spirits in war, so that is the thing. Malak's words were agreed to by Issei as Nick soon noticed two bite marks on Issei's neck as she asked. Ice, what are those bite marks on your neck? Issei became pale as he spoke, well. Both the Mocha sisters had a red tint on their faces, making the girls understand what had happened as the girls that loved Issei gave a death glare to Issei with their body language stating, there is no escape. Malak, Grievous and Vader nervously backed away, with Malakota also having a bit of jealousy present in her face. Ingvold and Valerie couldn't help but be saddened by what they are witnessing. A part of them wished that it was them as well, but they knew that Issei would never love them. Issei, meanwhile, gulped. He had a feeling that tonight will be really something, since he could see the girls have plans to do something to him. He could only hope that he survived tonight. Scene change. Time skip brought to you by Chibi. Issei running away from his harem, who all want a piece of him. One day later, Underworld, 9:30 am. Ahmed Azazel punched the wall in anger, almost bringing cracks into it. As he continued, he even managed to get the vampires as well. What should we do now? Falbium looked at Azazel, he was fearful. He did not want to die like his two friends, as Azazel spoke. We have no choice, I'll double time on the device to sustain his power. Azazel spoke with the coldest of tones, as Amaterasu spoke sadly, my people have lost the will to continue this war, many of them are awaiting the inevitable. He had already brought in so much fear that we can't even continue with defending ourselves. We can't give up just yet, do you think we are lambs for slaughter? There is no way we can give in to what he wants. Michael retorted, all the lives they have spent to stop the droid faction will be for naught. What's worse is that Shiva and the Hindu faction refuse to cooperate or even talk to them. Their last conversation was Shiva completely backing away from the alliance, leaving them to their demises. They made it clear that they shouldn't have admonished or humiliated Issei, to the point of driving him to this point. They would have been alive. Michael is right, we can't give up. Someone else had spoken in the room, as they all looked to see the magic circle of Surzich's Lucifer appear alongside Greyfia Lucifuge. He had already grieved a lot, and now it was time for vengeance, his vengeance. So that means, you have Surzich's cuts him off as he speaks, accept the proposal yes, if this is the only way to stop Issei's madness. Then I will do it, despite the risks. Greyfia was worried as she kept her hand on Surzich's as he keeps it on hers and speaks, we will avenge Milika's and Ria's, we will make Issei pay no matter what happens, but before that we will make him grieve the same loss we did, we will kill his child and allies first, then we will kill him at the end. Surzich's looks at Azazel and speaks. How long till the device gets ready? Azazel spoke with a sigh as he responds, 2-3 days, at most. That is good enough, with the vampires down, there is no way he will attack so soon. And that gives us enough time to prepare. Surzich's spoke seriously and coldly, with the other leaders nodding, they must stop Issei or else the supernatural will be done for. This device is the last hope that they have in order to stop Issei, otherwise they are done for. Chapter 42. Shinto Destruction. Issei was heading to the location alongside Malak and Vader were heading towards the lower branches of the underworld. The reason being is that he had heard from Elemental that Surzich's will come and stop him. Thankfully with Leisha's help, he was able to find the hidden laboratory that Ajuka had, as she had sent a map of the laboratory. Well, here we are. Issei spoke as he looked at what seemed to be Ajuka's laboratory, which didn't seem to be abandoned like Issei expected. So my visions were right. Issei looked at the laboratory, he had an idea on who was working on the laboratory. He looked at the prototype devices and he analyzed them, he knew what they were. Oh my, they wanted me to disrupt my visions. Interesting. Issei decided to enhance his gear, he easily crushed their devices, as he proceeded to walk across a console, using Unknown Dictator, he hacked into the console with relative ease and destroyed their data. Let's make their hope a little harder to get. Issei spoke with a mocking tone, as he looked at Malak and Vader, you know what to do, right? Malak and Vader used Force Lightning and Telekinesis respectively as they destroyed every single lab equipment, making sure that the factions don't have an easy way if they have to get their hope. Issei decided to play with his prey before defeating them. Our next goal will be to head to a certain prison. There is someone I wish to free before we face against the Shinto pantheon. Malak and Vader were surprised by this, as Malak asked, who is this person that you speak of? Issei turned around one of his trusted generals as he turned around and spoke one word, Izanami. Shinto Underworld, 9:30 am. Issei along with Malak and Vader head towards a specialized boulder, as Malak and Vader look at it and speak, that's it, they really imprisoned her in that rock. That's no ordinary rock, Vader, it is stated to be enchanted. Issei looked at Vader, as he continued, the reason is that from the myths, her husband was so horrified that he had to place a boulder to seal her away from the Shinto underworld. Just because her face looked like a rotting corpse. But how did even a goddess like her die? Vader asked with a surprised tone, to which Issei responded, the birth of the Shinto fire god left her with burns and deformities, causing her to tragically pass away. Her story showed the truth of messing with the underworld. But the despair and grief of being abandoned by her own husband still remains. I see. So all this while, her husband only preferred her looks and didn't love her truly, he couldn't find a way to restore her corpse state. Issei shook his head and responded. Tragically no. He eventually left her to her own fate and abandoned her. Issei responded, as he used some command seals to break the enchantments that are present in the rock, which was followed by him pushing it away. Once he went inside, he was ambushed by the several Shinto undead spirits who were trying to send Issei and the people away. However, upon seeing their strength, they avoided a confrontation. Just a little more we need to travel, and that is where Izanami will be. Both Malak and Vader nodded as they walked forward, eventually finding a rotting corpse of a woman sitting on what seemed to be a throne, as she spoke to the boy. Izanagi. Is that you? The woman spoke with hope as she looked up to see it was three people that she was unable to recognize as she asked with a soft tone. Who are you? Izanami looked to see Issei to be from the Shinto lands of Japan as she spoke, you come from the homeland of Shinto, what is your name, boy? The woman analyzed the boy's heart and was shocked to see how it was. He was once a pure-hearted boy that turned into a sort of a being that declared judgment. She hated what happened to him. However, before she could say anything, Issei had decided to introduce himself. "My name is Issei Haidu, and I am here to give you a way out, Izanami. What do you say?" The woman looked at Issei and shook her head. "No, I cannot leave. I mean, why would I wish to come to the surface world? I know of your intentions, young Issei. You wish to bring death and destruction amongst those that have been the cause of your suffering, and you desire me to be a part of that war. So you can read minds, huh?" Issei spoke while thinking. "Seems like Shiva is not the only one who can do this. Nice." The woman. "Compliments won't change my mind, child." Issei shook his head as he spoke. "I figured it won't be that easy. You know the amount of suffering I went through. The problem is, if you have read my mind, then you know that the factions blame Dai for everything, thinking that everything will be alright. They expect me to forgive and forget everything that they did to me and unconditionally help me." Izanami nodded in agreement. She could sense the anger and hatred coming from Issei's own heart as Izanami added her own words. "I understand your anger, child. But your hatred is what I fear. It may consume you, and I don't wish to see a pure-hearted soul like you to fall into darkness." Izanami, as much as she wanted vengeance and escape from this hellish place, she hated to see that the gods and others have turned someone like Issei into the dark side. Pure-hearted soul. "I mean, not going to lie, that was foolish of me to think that way, Izanami. Like, there was a time, I am not going to lie, that I would do anything for my loved ones, but look at how I was treated, Izanami. Nothing but admonishment, hatred and anger in their eyes, and what's worse, they intend to harm my unborn child. They refuse to give me any sort of peace." Izanami became wide-eyed. She knew her husband and others abandoned and disowned her, but to harm a mere child, that is too far. No way. He wouldn't go this far. Izanami shook her head in horror as Issei spoke. "Yes, they did, Izanami. Your husband is not the same people you knew, and this includes your children as well. Trust me, Izanami, they have changed for the worst." Izanami looked down in sadness as Issei approached the goddess without any fear or restraint. "Be careful." Vader muttered in concern as Issei pulled her expression up and spoke with a gentle smile. "Izanami, you are not to blame for your husband's and children's sins. You are a different person. Even if you are technically a rotting corpse, you still have a good heart. And in some cases, that is what matters." Izanami had a smile, which although showed 2 missing teeth, Issei was not fazed by this. "He has seen worse," as soon released her face and he continued. "But Izanami, what I don't understand is that why? Why don't you desire release? I have the power to give you release." Izanami shook her head as she spoke. "I do desire release, but no matter what I tried, my own sons, daughter and husband wanted me imprisoned." Issei nodded in understanding as he clenched his fists in anger. She then continued, "I stayed there because I was powerless to stop their combined assault, so ever since I gave up, and now I am trapped here, young Issei. I see. Well, what if I told you, I can help you, Izanami. I promise you, you will be out of this place, and I can even fix your undead expression, making you a lively goddess once again." Izanami widened her eyes as she asked, "Can you really do it?" "Indeed, I can. I have the Sephiroth Grawl which can revive you at your prime. I have done this for the Greek goddess Persephone, so I can do it with you." Issei spoke as he brought out the sacred gear as he continued, "And in return I want you to assist me in this war. It is coming to a closure anyway. So, I want your help to fight against the Shinto and the remnants of the other factions, along with the devils." Izanami thought for a moment as she spoke. "Fine, but I want you to make a small promise to me." "What promise? I mean, aren't I giving you so much?" Issei asked with a bit confusion as he wondered what else Izanami wanted as she spoke. "I wish for you to not have a war once this one ends. Will you be able to do that? I don't wish to see someone as pure as you continue this war." "I see. You truly are a noble goddess, Izanami." Issei spoke as he continued in a sad tone, "But I am afraid I can't make a promise like that." Izanami becomes slightly sad, not because I don't want to, but because I have no choice, because I will fight to protect my loved ones and my family, even if I have to fight a war against the gods. I will do it to protect my loved ones and my family, no matter the cost. Izanami looked at Issei as she gave a tired sigh. He has made up his mind, and there was no way to change his mind. "I see. It seems like you have made up your choice then. Well, I don't mind joining the faction, at least I know you are not a warmonger or something like that." Izanami got up from the throne. Despite being a rotten corpse, she was still better. Issei was surprised at first, but then he realized she was a primordial goddess, even when she was a rotting corpse. The Sephiroth Grawl glowed a bright yellow color which changed Izanami completely. Now she had the appearance of a slender and very youthful woman with blue eyes and black hair. She gave an aura depicting death, yet it was gentle, something that Issei was familiar with thanks to Hades, especially in the current times. The woman wore a black and white kimono based on the attire with a large visible scar right above the woman's chest. Issei also severed her connection with the realm, allowing her to freely travel outside of the world of Yomi. The woman touched her face and gave a smirk as she spoke, "Seems like it worked. I have been restored to what I have been. Thank you, young Issei. That is the least I could do." Issei soon gave a hand as he spoke, "Now come, we have a war to win." Izanami happily accepted his hand as the two walked towards Malak and Vader, with Izanami soon releasing his hand. Issei then spoke to Malak, "Give Grievous and Nyx the signal, they are good to unleash their attack." "So that means, you had planned for this?" Issei only looked at Izanami and gave a smirk as he spoke, "Let's head outside, being for long is something I don't plan to be." Izanami nodded, she was unfamiliar with the new world outside, only hearing information from the souls that do enter here. She was even more curious as to what she can expect. "I am curious, what does the modern world have in store for me? Like what are these mobile phones and laptops?" Issei, Malak and Vader were surprised by this as he asked. "You mean, you haven't seen them?" Issei asked, to which Izanami shook her head and spoke, "No, I only have heard of the technological advancements that have happened, that's it. Never seen them in person. Sorry if that is embarrassing." Izanami spoke while looking away and having a blush. Issei shook his head and responded, "No, I will teach you and help you everything you need. Once we are done, let me know, okay?" Izanami looked at him and gave a genuine smile as she responded, "Yes." The four soon head to the rock as it was once again placed. As Issei spoke, "Well, it seems like they wish to trap us there. Well." Issei once again used a similar disabling spell, but much stronger as the magic got disabled. Malak, Vader and Ambush is present on the other side, "You must be ready." The two generals looked at him and nodded as soon as he pulled the rock. Issei readily generated a barrier as he protected the forces from an oncoming barrage. As soon as the barrage ended, Issei averted the barrier as he looked at his attackers. Moments later when the dust settled, it was revealed to be several Shinto minor gods and goddesses. However, what caught his eye were Tsukiyomi and Susanoo. However, the third person surprised him. He wore traditional Shinto clothing, however like Tsukiyomi, his hair was white and it was long, almost reaching shoulder length. Issei recognized the person, this was Izanagi, the former husband of Izanami. "You bastard, you have some nerve of showing yourself in the personal grounds of Shinto territory after what you have done." Issei only scoffed at the arrogance of Izanagi as he spoke. "I go where I want and it's not like of you to even care for her." Issei spoke with a mocking tone as Izanagi got angered by this, gritting his teeth in fury, while Izanami was left appalled by how much Izanagi has changed. She knew that this was not the man she once loved. "And besides, who are you to decide whether she gets to live in the underworld or not? You are no one, just an arrogant god who thinks the world revolves around him." Issei spoke with an annoyed tone, angering Izanagi as Tsukiyomi asked with horror, "Mother, how have you been released and why are you with this traitor?" Izanami only glared at Tsukiyomi. He knew that the chances of him and his brother defeating Susanoo were low, but with Issei, Malak and Vader around, it is next to minimum. "Why? I know what you three have been doing behind my back, attacking an innocent child, making this child's life miserable by listening to lies and deceit and never taking accountability. Is this what you have become in my absence? Seems like you have become cowardly like your father had become a long time ago." Izanami spoke coldly. She was utterly disgusted at what her faction has become behind her back as Susanoo spoke with anger. "He has been feeding you lies." Mother Susanoo's words only made Issei shake his head as Izanami responded, "I can read his mind, Susanoo, or are you so taken in by lies? I saw the boy's mind and heart, it is pure, however it was corrupted by you people and the ones you allied yourself with, the so-called biblical factions. Didn't you realize that they only cared about themselves, or were you so taken in by sweet talks of peace? You all have become like them, you disgust me in every way." Susanoo and Tsukiyomi were fearful by their mother's cold tone as she looked towards Issei and spoke, "This boy has fought tooth and nail for you gods, while you sit comfortably in safe comfort areas, only stepping in when you or your lands are in danger. You left him dead several times, yet he still fought for you over and over again, until he finally snapped and turned against you." Izanami then looked towards all three with an angered yet betrayed look that showed she was horrified by what they have become. It was not enough for them to betray and disown Izanami, but they do such heinous actions to an ordinary boy, an ordinary human nevertheless. This was not how they should have treated him. The three flinched from the angry gaze of their mother-wife as Izanami continued, "The mere fact that you blame others for your sin shows that the droid faction is right in dealing with you. You deserve to be punished in every way for what you have done to this innocent child and many others." "Issei." Izanami looked at Issei and asked, "May I deal with Izanagi?" "Sure, but I will be joining you. Once I deal with these minor gods." Issei then looked at Malak and Vader, who understood what they had to do. They had to take down Susanoo and Tsukiyomi, as he looked back to Izanami and spoke. I don't mind you joining. Let's end this once and for all. I wish to explore the outside world, and no one will stop me. Izanagi got angry by this, as he angrily retorted. I won't let you release your damn feet into this world. Izanami, the primordial god of creation and life. He unleashed several plant vines towards Izanami. As Izanami only had a small smile, in less than a split second, she slashed through all the vines like it was nothing but dust. Even Issei was surprised, only being able to see the strikes since he had better vision. Her hair was flowing gracefully into the surroundings. Her sword skills are really something. Issei mentally commented, as only his generals can contend with this level of sword fighting. As Drake added, she is known as the primordial goddess of death for a reason, and the only one who could go toe-to-toe with Izanagi. She easily surpassed the 3 Shinto pillar gods, and can even match Zeus in terms of power, alongside Izanagi, of course. Even Malak and Vader were amazed by the skills, only noticing it due to the superior training. Izanami soon puts her katana beside her body while holding it, as she spoke with a mocking grin, is that all of you have got? Have your skills been lacking after all this while? You. Izanagi growled in response as Izanami looked at Issei and asked, I take it you have got good sword skills too, yeah? Indeed, and not just me, even Malak and Vader have, and some of my generals have excellent weaponry and powers. Issei spoke, as Vader added, we do have some amazing skills, shall we demonstrate them? This is going to be fun dealing with 2 pillar gods, I am certainly going to enjoy this. Malak responded, as Issei spoke, boys, let's end these gods and call it a day, wouldn't you agree? Malak and Vader agreed, as Issei brought out the mortis blade and an additional blade with him. It was described to have a common hilt, like a regular blade, however it had a dark aura within it, and a dark covering. This was his recently developed sacred gear, the Dark Saber, capable of penetrating through any armor or magic barrier. Issei got into his double-bladed stance and spoke coldly, let's dance. Malak brought out his light blade and Mjolnir, and Vader did the same with his light blade. All 4 of them got ready to fight against the Shinto gods, as Izanami dashed towards Izanagi, while Issei went and dealt with the minor god and goddess soldiers that surrounded him. Malak and Vader took on the 2 pillar gods Susanoo and Tsukiyomi respectively. Issei looked at the minor gods and goddesses that tried to unleash their magic circles, only for Issei to act swiftly and deflect the magic with one blade and deal the finishing blow with a mortis blade as he decapitated anyone that stood in his way. At this point, Issei had complete resistance to ultimate, Satan or even god-class spells. He knew that the 2 twin blades should be more than enough to deal with them. One god tried to punch him with a fist straight to the head, however Issei blocked it with a dark saber as he spoke, not bad, an attack aimed at the head. Issei followed it up with a slash aimed at the head, as his torso fell to the ground. Seeing this, the others tried to flee, however Issei was not going to let that happen. Blitzing forward in blinding speeds, Issei decapitated and killed every last one of them. He had a sadistic grin throughout the fight, mercilessly wiping out every last one of them. Issei soon gathered and compassed himself, as he went on to help Izanami, who was clashing swords with Izanagi, who also had brought out his own katana. The clash between the 2 was enough to create shockwaves throughout the battlefield. They kept unleashing slashes towards each other, with the other blocking it. Seems like you are growing weaker, dear husband. Izanami spoke with a sadistic grin, as Izanagi gritted his teeth in frustration. He attempted to slash her at the stomach, however Izanami gracefully evaded the strike as she reached Issei. But no sooner than she did, she felt the energy irradiating out of the mortis blade and spoke, that's some intense god-slaying magic coming from the blade. Yep, specially designed it to deal with some gods. Now shall we end this? Izanami gave a smile and looked at her former husband, we shall. Izanagi was horrified. He could see the corpses that have been once gods and goddesses, slain by Issei, but before he could react, the 2 charged at him, as Izanagi struggled to block the 2 strikes. Izanagi used his free hand to block the barrier, however Issei slashed it with the dark saber, breaking it, which was followed by Izanami as she slashed onto Izanagi's chest, making him scream in pain. Seizing the opportunity, Issei followed it with a slash from the mortis blade, but was blocked by vines courtesy of Izanagi. However, Izanami cleared the vines, giving a smile to Issei, allowing Issei to slash Izanagi with the mortis blade. Another slash was delivered to Izanagi, as his body now had an X-shaped slash, as he gritted his teeth due to the pain. However, the slash from Issei's own blade delivered on the primordial god sizzled, making him grit his teeth even more. I know what you are doing, and you know what I am doing, talk about synergy. Issei commented, to which Izanami responded, let's hope our synergy is beneficial. Izanami responded with a smile of her own, as Issei nodded. The 2 then glared at Izanagi, who generated a massive golem, which was composed of rocks. Issei was ready to take it down, however Izanami pointed her blade in front of Issei. Allow me. Izanami spoke with a smile as she glared at the golem, and before anyone could react the primordial goddess unleashed several slashes to the golem, causing it to fall into rocks. Izanagi was shocked by this, he knew he stood no chance to their combined assault. Especially with Issei joining him. He knew that Izanami was equal to his strength and powers, and with Issei joining him, his chances of winning were extremely low and next to none. He felt fear seeing these two work together, however he was surprised when suddenly a magic circle opened up. Yes. Izanagi became pale as he looked at Issei and glared at him with anger in his eyes, with Issei smirking. I take it that you have received the news, right? Of your faction falling apart. Issei's words made even the other two stop with their fights as the two Shinto gods looked at Issei in horror, with Malak and Vader having a smirk. It seems like the others have done their job. I am surprised, your faction is really powerful to actually do that. Izanami spoke with a tone of surprise as Issei gave a smile in return. They have been awaiting my orders till we unleashed our own chaos and troubling and harassing the factions. I see. You never cease to surprise me, don't you? Issei nodded as he looked at Izanagi, who was on the verge of tears, knowing that his faction will fall today. Scene change. Shinto Heaven, 4:30 p.m. The war that went on for a few hours is almost at its end as one woman was seen heavily breathing. She had several cuts and wounds, and her clothing was on the verge of complete destruction, showing several parts of the body, including her breasts, abdomen, some of her shoulder and lower legs. Earlier she had contacted her father and brothers, but it was too late to do anything. She gritted her teeth in pain as she looked at her oncoming attackers. It was Grievous and Nyx who were asked to lead the assault on the Shinto Heavens, and they succeeded in bringing it down. Even Artemis managed to join the fight and take out some of the minor gods and goddesses. I believe the war is at its end, Amaterasu. The one who spoke was Grievous as she looked at the droid general with anger and hatred. However, upon closer inspection, some of the metal seemed to be a bit black in color, indicating Amaterasu was able to inflict some damage onto the droid general. However, with Nyx working in tandem, there was no way she could even damage the droid general that seriously. You will regret what you have done, you damned monster. Surziches is going to become stronger, and our deaths won't be in vain. He will use. Nyx cuts her off and speaks. The trick is not going to work because no matter what he does, he will never reach Great Redder Office's level, and Issei has surpassed even their power as well, not combined, but when they are alone. Amaterasu became pale by this revelation as she knew what this meant and that their chances of winning were never there. They knew that they are going to be defeated regardless of what happened. Tears started to fall from her eyes, regretting ever listening to the faction leaders and most importantly die as Grievous looked at her coldly and spoke in the same tone. There is no point in crying over a lost cause. This is all your fault, you brought this on yourselves, and none of you ever had the thought of realizing that he was lying to you all this time. You made Issei's life miserable while letting a fraud succeed. You all gods should be ashamed of yourselves. Amaterasu did not respond to what Grievous has stated as Nyx continued. Grievous is right, and the mere fact you failed to see his deceit and broke the good man makes only you responsible for what is to come. I have seen the grief and helplessness in his eyes, and while you were celebrating the fruits and suffering due to his hard-earned labor, he was only getting stronger. Strong enough to one day overthrow you false gods and goddesses. Nyx angrily declared, making Amaterasu teary-eyed. Let's end this and head home, we have already won this war. Nyx nodded in agreement as she responded. I agree. Nyx grabbed Amaterasu by her arms, with her darkness as Grievous approached closer and sliced her head, quickly decapitating it, killing her as Grievous spoke coldly. Now with that done. Let's ask Malakota to wipe everyone out with the Death Star. Nyx nodded as they both left the area. Scene change. Shinto Underworld entrance, 4:15 p.m. Izanagi wanted to leave since he had to save his daughter from the droid faction, but Issei and Izanami were not going to let that happen. Izanami quickly chanted a spell as several Shinigamis from the underworld had ambushed Izanagi, trapping him. Izanami was able to take down several of them as Izanami shouted, "End him now." Issei nodded as he dashed towards Izanagi and stabbed him in the heart with the mortis blade as he looked at him in horror. The poison in the blade soon seeped inside of him as Izanami walked towards him and spoke. So how does it feel, husband? Izanami knew that what was going as Izanagi asked, "Please, save me." Izanami. Why? Why should I save you? You left me to rot as a corpse in the world of Yomi, you deserve to die now. Goodbye, and with that your faction has fallen. Now I will live a normal life. While you remain in the afterlife, trapped in there, just like I was. Izanami turned away as Izanagi tried to reach Izanami as he soon lost his vision and passed away. Susanoo and Tsukiyomi looked in horror as Malak and Vader attacked the two gods. Susanoo, out of anger, unleashed a thunderstorm at the two, with Malak responded using Mjolnir to unleash his own thunderstorm to counteract his, while Tsukiyomi unleashed a moon slash which Vader easily deflected like it was nothing. They had been fighting for a while now, only stopping twice, once when they heard the news of Shinto faction falling, and now Izanagi's death. Vader was quick and elusive, matching Tsukiyomi's strikes like it was nothing, as he managed to stab him at different locations, causing him to be grazed, while Susanoo was trying his best to use his power as the god of storms to attack Malak, but was unable to do any significant damage to the second in command of the droid faction. Is that all? Malak looked coldly as he shook his head. Susanoo was the weakest god he had to fight so far, even his fight against the Greek gods were slightly more challenging than him. You little Susanoo was unable to complete as Malak raised some of his fingers with his telekinesis as he slammed him to the ground before he could react. Quickly sizing up the opportunity, Malak used Mjolnir and unleashed a strong hammer slam at the god of storms, sending him flying towards a nearby rock. Susanoo tried to get up, but Malak threw the hammer at the god, making him completely immobilized. He tried to remove the hammer, but Malak only approached him. The god of storms had fear in his eyes. Meanwhile, Tsukiyomi was unleashing barrages of moon attacks at Vader, who was easily blocking them with his light blade. Quickly sizing up the opportunity, Vader leaped into the battlefield and used insanity, giving him immense hallucinations about the battles and actions, making Tsukiyomi grab his head in pain. The god of the moon begged Vader to stop, only for the Dark Lord to stab him in the heart, causing him to have a look of horror before he closed his eyes and passed away. Another god had fallen to the power of the droid faction as Vader turned around to Malak and saw him crouching down to Susanoo's level. Well, now any last words? Susanoo looked at Malak and turned away. He had no words left as Susanoo spoke. I have none. Yo, you monster. I see. Well, you know what they say, we all dread the monster you create. Now say your prayers, cause no one is going to help you. Malak raised his arm and started siphoning the life energy from Susanoo. He struggled to be released, sensing the life force of him being sucked out. This went on for a few minutes as he soon slumped down like a corpse. His body seemed like it had been drained out completely. But his death marked the end of the Shinto faction as Malak was joined by Issei, Izanami and Vader as he spoke. So it's over? Izanami asked, to which Issei gave a nod, after which he responded. Yes, the battle is over, but the war is not yet over. Issei looked at Izanami and spoke, come, let's get you integrated into our house. Yes, Izanami happily responded as the four teleported away, leaving nothing but corpses. Scene change. Underworld, 7:30 p.m. Kunu was running away with her life intact. Earlier, she had managed to hear some of the Devil Council talking about Issei, and it turns out that they are Issei's spies that have been reporting him everything, acting as his eyes and ears. She was caught and almost killed, but thanks to her being a kitsune, she was able to deceive and trick them, allowing her to escape. Additionally, she also felt her power dwindle and she sensed the Shinto pantheon's fall. She managed to reach Surziches and Azazel, who were talking to each other on the plans to defeat Issei. Additionally, they found out that Issei had destroyed their laboratory. However, Surziches knew that there was another one, which was deep hidden inside the old one. The one which Issei destroyed was nothing but a false front. There was an additional hidden laboratory. Unfortunately for Issei, only Surziches knew about this one, and no one else, not even Seraphil or Falbium knew about this, only Surziches did, and he told this to Azazel. The two were working on the device that would allow them to give them the power to disrupt his visions, as well as the container that would handle the king pieces. Surziches-sama, Azazel-sama, Kunu shouted, calling them as she looked at them and spoke. Yes. I have some bad news to tell. Kunu spoke with sadness, as Azazel asked. Why? What is the matter? Azazel asked with worry and concern, as Surziches spoke. Kunu, tell us what exactly happened. Shinto pantheon has fallen, the droid faction has slaughtered Amaterasu-sama. I can't sense the other gods anymore. Kunu spoke with tears in her eyes, as Azazel and Surziches clenched their fists in anger. They knew they had to double time on at least the container that would use the king pieces. I see. Surziches growled in response. He was going to make Issei pay for every single death that his action has led to. Kunu.we will avenge what we have lost and get back your mother, find a way to release her from the control of the Malabranch. Azazel spoke while assuring Kunu that everything would be alright, however she knew that the chances of them winning this are very low. Something told her that Issei was only toying with them, he was hiding something that made her very afraid. There is something else I need to inform you about. Azazel looked at Kunu, who had spoken, as she continued, the Devil Council, they have been reporting to Issei about everything. They had made a deal with him about giving the territory of Nibirius in exchange for their lives. As well as sending them some of their girls to his place. Makes sense. I should have known they would be the first to turn on us. Surziches spoke with a frustrated sigh, as Azazel spoke. Should we eliminate them? I see no reason in keeping them alive. No, I have a plan for them. Surziches spoke with a sinister grin as he continued, let them hear us, but we will let them what we want them to hear. Sounds good. That way we can ambush Haidu and his faction when he least expects it. Not a bad idea. Azazel spoke with a smile, as he looked at him and spoke, "We should double time on the device, Issei will attack us next, and we need to be prepared for that." Azazel nodded as he headed to the secret laboratory in hopes of dealing with Issei once and for all. Surziches follows him while Kunu heads to her own personal room. She still had some hope of saving her mother, despite knowing that Issei is hiding something. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.